Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Scott Schiescher. I represent Minnesota Water Quality Association. We're an association that serves Minnesota. We're part of a national association called Water Quality Association. I'm employed by Dreesen Water, Culligan Ultra Pure here in Northfield. We're a family-owned business. We have 24 locations across Minnesota, Indiana, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. We're here tonight to talk about the proposed water treatment plant and some of the different aspects about it that we want to just bring out and make people aware of. I'm really fortunate tonight to have Jeff Hill here. Jeff has been in the water treatment industry 53 years. He's a chemist. He's highly regarded in our industry. The governor of Minnesota appointed Jeff to the plumbing board, and I'm very, very happy to have Jeff here. Also online, we have Eric Yagi. Eric is with the National Water Quality Association out of Chicago. Eric is the Technical Affairs Director for WQA Water Quality Association, and he'll help us out with some content tonight. So why are we here? So we're here to simply talk about some different aspects of this plan. We want to talk about the objectives. We want to understand what different options there are around the topic of manganese. We want to talk about some terms and understanding some terms that are being communicated. We're going to briefly talk about chlorides and how chlorides affect our waters here in Minnesota. And if you're like me, I value and I treasure our waters here in Minnesota. So we're going to briefly talk about that. And Eric is going to talk about some potential legacy concerns. You know, if and when the new water treatment plant goes online, just some things that we should be aware of and that we feel is good communication for the public. So, Jeff?
Well, I'd be remiss if, after that nice introduction, if I didn't introduce Scott, although he's probably better known to a lot of people here, certainly than I am. But from my perspective in Minneapolis and the Minnesota Water Quality Association, his firm has been really the stalwart, both financially and in the labor hours, in doing the bidding of the consumer at the Minnesota Water Quality Association. Scott, in particular, has spent hundreds of hours with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency on this chloride issue. And so he'll talk about that, because one of the benefits of this plant that's being proposed is a reduction of chloride, and there's nobody in the state better than him. But his firm has also worked on the ethics, heavily with the Department of Labor and Industry on what plumbing regulation should be. And just this year, a success in the legislature, the state offering testing for private wells. So we're going to be helping individual homeowners to look for arsenic, and not likely so much lead, but arsenic, nitrate, bacteria, and potentially manganese in rural wells. Well, anyway, a little bit about Scott. You know, I looked at what we talked about just before you started talking, and missing on our page is any explanation of the plant. And so let's do something, and you know that better than I do, sure. But for those who might not have read all that you have, the water treatment plant being proposed
is gravity filtration and reverse
osmosis. But
osmosis.
It's a central plant.
Right.
And now you have remote wells, which makes plumbing nice, by the way, because every neighborhood has a well, and they can kind of, the water can cross. If you have a lot of demand in one area, the water kind of sneaks across to the other area, but you don't have any big mains coming to a central point and out. So one of the big expenses of a central plant, one of the big steps that Northfield wants to take, is to pipe all the water from all the wells to one place and then pipe it all back out again. And what's the reason for the plan? We had a little trouble determining that, didn't we?
Well, it started as a manganese issue.
Is that really what started it?
That was one of the things. You know, having a central location for employees, staffing, trucks, have a central facility that was, you know, those concerns were raised. So, but it started with the manganese issue.
Yeah, that's true. It provides a big building for the city to consolidate, as I understand it. So, but that would be the tail wagging the dog a little if we're doing the water treatment plant in order to build the building.
Sure.
But that's definitely one of the benefits. Let's talk about what our objectives are in this meeting. I think we feel that we were a little rejected in presenting our opinions to the city. We initially were going to have a meeting with the engineering department at the city hall, and now we're here and we're paying for the room. But I saw the emails on 50 North and I didn't know what that meant. But I'm north of 70, so I understand now what the 50 North is, and I'm comfortable here. So, but we don't think that we've had a good chance of dialogue. And there's one email that criticized would be the light word, but criticized Scott because he has a career in sales. And we've been promoting our industry for our whole career, so we're in sales and we have some ideas. But we think we should be on equal footing with engineering firms that are in sales. People that want to build your $38 million water treatment plant are in sales too. So we'd like our ideas to be heard. So that's one objective. What about misstatements?
Yeah, I think when I started hearing about the plant and the communication that was going on about the plant, a lot of it made great sense. And I don't want to be misinterpreted as just a negative person, because I'm not. There's parts of this plant that make a lot of sense. The chloride discharge issue down the road is really logical. But what I wanted to talk about briefly is about terms and recommendations that are being made. And one of the terms is that the city is going to provide soft water. Now, soft water to most consumers mean I'm going to get water with no hardness in it. Agreed? It means I got water with no hardness in it. To a point. The city is going to do a great job reducing that hardness down to 5, 6, 7 grains, somewhere in there, but it's not soft water. And the reason I want to bring that up tonight is that as a consumer, that maybe I have a reverse osmosis system, or I have a boiler system in my house, or I have some type of appliance that I want to be ensured I have soft water as close to 0 grains hard as possible. I don't want to have a misunderstanding. So I just think that it's important for the city not to use terms like that. They can be very effective and use terms that are really accurate and don't send us in the wrong direction. That's one thing.
And my other objective is that we should understand the risks in water treatment. And I want to throw some numbers up.
Yeah, go ahead.
On manganese and the regulations and the risks. But everyone should understand I'm out of my field. I'm pretty confident in the 53 years I have on water treatment, but I'm not your physician and I'm not a health expert, but we can report what's in the city's report. Oh, we're remiss in not introducing the third one of us. There's this character up there on the screen. Hi, Eric. Eric offered to fly in for the meeting when the city was willing to meet with us, but for multiple reasons we decided to discourage him from the expense for this meeting, but he still wanted to be here. And we might call on Eric for some expertise. He's our national guy. He's with the Water Quality Association, and their headquarters is in Lisle, Illinois. And it's an association of manufacturers of water treatment devices as well as the dealers that provide the services. And Eric is the technical director. So he has a lot of contact with the legislative affairs people who know the regulations that are being passed. And on the other hand, has the contact with all the manufacturers and what their specifications are. All right, at the risk of being boring for a minute.
Go ahead.
Manganese is a new problem in water. And when I say it's a new problem, the word problem is what's new, but manganese isn't new in water. It's very natural, and it's been in our water forever around here. And I want to put some of the numbers up. The World Health Organization recommends that water internationally, wherever people are drinking it, not exceed 400 milligrams per liter. And that's also called parts per billion. Scott will stop me if I take more than, 20 minutes on this? I'm a chemist by training.
Micrograms or milligrams?
Micro.
You said milligrams.
Oh, sorry.
But I see it's at the U there.
Yeah, with a tail. What do you call the U with the tail? Anybody? It's a Greek thing, and I apologize. Oh, that is the name?
I believe so.
Mu?
Yeah.
MU? Okay. Now, we don't have a standard in the United States for manganese, but they're kind of zeroing in on 300. So, and I think that's one of the numbers that's being focused on today in the water treatment plant. Now, Canada led the world, and so they think there's a little more risk. I should use parts per billion, then I wouldn't have to try to make that little U all the time. Canada's at 120, and that, I believe, is mandated. We haven't got there yet in the United States. Now, Minnesota is pushing this kind of hard, but it still is not a mandate for cities to test, at least as of their website as of today, and it's not a mandate to reach any certain level. But the state of Minnesota wants to be at 300. With one caveat, an infant should not have more than 100, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, in the first year. So it's interesting that manganese is a nutrient. And I have that on a different sheet, but the requirement that we each have for nutrients is about 2,000 micrograms per day. Now that's not per liter or anything, that's per day. Now, of course, it's better to get that through fruits and vegetables and spinach and things, but this is, if you drank a quart of water at 300, you'd get about 13% of the manganese that you need. I think the important thing, we spent enough time on numbers, I think the important thing is it's up in the air, we've all been drinking it, it is a risk, we're told, and I'm sure that's the case. It is a risk at some point. Now this number, according to the Minnesota Department of Health, or maybe I got this from the federal government, but the 300 is a safe lifetime exposure. Because like lead and copper and other metals, they can build up over time. So it's important that you're not going to get sick from one day, likely at 300, but if you have a continuous exposure at 300. Now, without getting too much more into numbers, can you rattle off the well? I will write them down quickly, but can you rattle off the wells in Northfield?
So the last test results I have, and there could be something more current than this.
These are each different well, then, right?
Yeah, number 2 was 28. Number 3, there was no test. Number 4 was 344.
Okay.
Number 5 was 081.
81?
Yes, and 6 was no test. So that was in 2020.
Okay.
Again, if there's something more current than that, I don't have that.
And the averages they reported are, well, it seems to me higher on average.
Slightly.
But nothing over 300. Anyway, the point is we're kind of flirting with a level that it's a health concern, for sure. Now, one of the first reactions, I want to tell a story from my city, because one of the first reactions I heard is, holy cow, they're jumping way ahead for a manganese problem that they're just bumping the limit on here. I live in Edina. I've learned over years not to say that because it can get you in trouble at places, but we have a real frugal engineering department, I think. Although I have a high level of services, I think the trucks are fancier than they should be sometimes. And I get my street plowed within 2 hours and then cleaned up again the same day. But we've chosen, we have 17 wells, and we've chosen just to put a filter at the well. Now, we've only done that on 11 of them. And presumably they all, around here, everything's got iron and manganese in it. So presumably they all have iron and manganese. But I talked to the city today, and manganese was not on his radar. And I said, you've got to have some. And he said, yeah, it's somewhere on my desk here. But of course, they filter it at 11 of the wells. And if those other wells are a little higher, their theory is, and it's worked now for many, I was going to say 50, but more than that, many years. Their theory is that those high iron and manganese wells are used only in the summer when people are irrigating, and the water races through so fast. Now, they weren't worried about health when they came up with this plan. They were worried about iron and manganese oxidizing, turning brown and black, and settling in the mains. But it goes through so fast in the summer that it doesn't happen much, but it does happen. He said he gets 2 complaints a year for manganese, or at least a black stain that looks like manganese. So they're going to have to address it too. If the levels are 300 or start going below, we're going to have to put a filter on those other wells. But it's pretty inexpensive. Now, there were 3 proposals that Northfield had for 3 different options?
Well, there was 3 options.
What were the 3?
I don't remember all 3 of them off the top of my head, but it settled on gravity filtration and RO.
Okay. Oh, gravity by itself was one.
Gravity by itself,
Yeah,
I think,
just
was
filtering.
one. Right.
And what would be?
What do you?
Well, time. The question was, how do you coagulate iron and manganese? And the coagulation flocculation happens with time, but first you need oxidation. And oxidants that are used are permanganate, chlorine, and air. And I've done a lot of this in small commercial applications, and we favor air because it's free. But when you can't get it all with air, you don't have enough time, then chlorine is really helpful. So those are the ways to do that. But anyway, the city of Northfield has tentatively, as we understand it, decided on the membrane option, which, as we said to start with, seems jumping way ahead. And one of the reasons I think we feel that way is that there's a lot of talk now about new contaminants. I don't think there's any risk of microplastics in your water because it's from deep wells. But pharmaceuticals and other things are of concern. And I think that I'm getting off into opinion here, but because this is kind of a gut feeling, that going to a plant that's very expensive for one contaminant that we're just on the verge of seems a little extreme. So, I should mention, I was talking about what we do in Edina. The city of Minneapolis has to go with lime hardness reduction, which was one of that's what the middle proposal was before RO. Yeah, gravity filtration, flocculation with soda ash, which is just filtration of hardness and iron and manganese, and then reverse osmosis was the fancy one. Okay, a quick comment about Minneapolis. It's kind of interesting from a Northfield perspective. They have to do lime hardness reduction, not for the hardness so much, but they're using surface water. They're taking it out of the river. So it's whatever St. Cloud dumped in it that's going to the Minneapolis water supply. So they're really worried about all those things, pharmaceuticals, bacteria, but cryptosporidium is a big one, and giardia, lots of disease-causing organisms. So it's very important how they run their plant. And filtration after the addition of lime and soda ash is the way they go about it. But about 10 or 15 years ago, they decided to go with this new idea, membrane technology. And in 2 phases, they were going to replace the plant. And they did the first half in a huge project, and they found it to be too expensive to operate, that the membranes plugged up and failed. And so they've gone back to just the lime hardness reduction, and they never completed the plant. So those are 2 stories from small town Edina and big city Minneapolis with very different raw water qualities that I think have some impact here. Oh, why don't you talk about chlorides since you're the expert?
So chlorides, it's a serious topic. You know, in some of our communities in Minnesota, chloride discharge is a really bad thing. Water softeners are one of the reasons that chlorides get discharged, because you use salt to perform the ion exchange process. Clearing our roads in Minnesota, you know, in heavily populated areas, is a big issue. You know, we use salt on those roads, and that's a huge issue. I met a lady by the name of Brooke Asleson about 10 years ago with the MPCA, and she was doing a salt symposium in the cities. And it really was interesting to me because our industry is one of the reasons chlorides get in the water. So I engaged with Brooke for years and asked her what our industry can do with this problem in Minnesota's water. Because, you know, I live here and I value this community, I value the water here, but I want to do the right thing, I want to do the right thing for our industry so we're not harming the environment. So as time went on with Brooke, I came to understand that we as consumers can have a big impact on the chloride issue. We as consumers, without spending 10 cents, can have a big impact. Now, how do you do that? Well, lots of ways. Number one, I'll go back to the water softener, which is one of the reasons we get chloride in the water. Is your water softener optimized? Is it running the way it should be? Or have we been down there fiddling with the dials and trying to make it as soft as we possibly can? That's one thing you can do. Number two, do you have the right type of equipment in your home for the problem that you're facing? Number three, every time it snows and we get ice on the roads and on the sidewalks, when you go out to ice it, how do you do it? And the MPCA has some phenomenal programs for communities, just like Northfield, to help educate us on how we as consumers can help impact the chloride issue in our state. So I think that without jumping to a new plant as one of the reasons to solve the chloride issues, there's lots of things we can do today to help solve that issue. Anything else on that, Jeff?
No, but there is a point to be made. Scott was talking about optimizing softeners and improving them. We did a study, was it Madison?
Madison.
Madison,
Yep.
where they kind of forced it into people, it went into people's homes because they could monitor the sewage in districts. And they went into everyone's home in one area and adjusted their softeners. And they dropped their chlorides 46%. And then another area, they paid for new ones. Do I have the numbers wrong? I think we dropped 26% by adjusting.
Yeah, and then up to 60 or 46% by
when we bought them new
replacement, right?
ones. Yeah, so there's that room. But I think the important thing that we need to make in Northfield, though, is if the plant is put in as proposed, it will help the chlorides.
Without a question.
Without question. I mean, the water hardness is going to be down by 75% at least, and so a well-adjusted water softener should be turned down 75%. Now, one of our key points, though, here is that you should turn your water softener down 75%. Now we put our salesman's hat on. You shouldn't live with hard water. And we vehemently disagree with the sales tactics of the plant that you're going to get soft water. In fact, we're barred by our ethics for selling any equipment that's called a softener or the water produced is soft if it's over 1 grain. 1 grain is kind of what Scott referred to earlier as none.
Right.
But it's a practical level. If you have a high pressure steam boiler, you're going to want to be way lower than that. But for consumers, homes, hospitals, and schools, 1 grain per gallon is the level. So it's inappropriate. I think it's inappropriate to call it a softening plant. Well, you can argue it's softer, but it's really inappropriate to call it soft water, and it's really inappropriate to tell the people in Northfield that they should take out their water softeners, because everybody's desire for clean clothes and a protected water heater is a little different than everybody else's. And of course, there's a lot of people are doing what we call point of use and point of entry treatment now. People are getting pickier about their water. They want the chlorine out is the most common thing. But to reduce the hardness is important too. Eric is kind enough to be listening in, and one area that he's got particular expertise from a national perspective is this issue. I think Northfield might face a legacy issue, which kind of ties into the fact people have softeners, Eric, and that is about what's in the water mains and what might change when
the chemistry changes.
When they change the chemistry and change the water. Hang on a minute, Eric. We don't have the speaker on.
You're on mute, Eric, or Reese. Oh, I think it just timed out. Try it again, Eric. Nope.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah.
We can, in the famous words of Verizon, we can hear you now.
So Scott and Jeff asked me to tend to talk about what can sometimes happen when large changes are made to the water chemistry in a public water supply. So while changes like this are always made with the best of intentions, there can sometimes be unintended consequences. For example, the issue that Jeff was talking about, if you currently have manganese in the drinking water, it is likely that you've accumulated large amounts of legacy manganese in the service lines and even in the premise plumbing in your homes. Manganese tends to build up inside the pipes in this way, and other metals tend to accumulate in these scale deposits along with the manganese. Large changes in the water chemistry can then cause this scale inside the pipes to destabilize. So when this happens, you can cause problems with colored water, or spikes in the manganese concentration, or even spikes in other metals that are contained in this scale. These other metals could be things like iron, which is mainly just an aesthetic concern, but it could also include things like lead, which creates a health concern. So I don't know all the details of the Northfield situation, but my point is just that it's always good to consider simpler options, such as filtration at the well, to avoid making large changes to the water chemistry. And that's simply because you want to avoid these unintended consequences.
Thanks, Eric. And
Thanks, Eric.
when I first started, talking today, I just said that this is something that, if the plant, is completed and it goes online, I just think that it's good communication that the city would tell the consumers that it's potential you could experience this for a given period of time. And that's the only point I want to make there, is that we want to make sure we have good communication with us, because if this plant goes online, it would be shocking if we had a legacy issue for a given period of time. So that's the point.
But I think most homes, I'm guessing, if it's like other communities in Northfield, have softeners. So hopefully the city, if they go through with the plant, will not encourage you to throw them out immediately, because the softeners will continue to take out iron and manganese. It's likely that what Eric talks about is likely to be a different form. The ion exchange softeners are taking out dissolved manganese now, so it's clear when it comes in. And what Eric's talking about is these spurts would be the oxidized and flocculated manganese, so it's going to be particles, so it's a little different. But softeners are pretty good filters for that too. We're pretty much good on the technical. I did want to point out that from an environmental impact, I don't want to overstate it, but the proposal to do reverse osmosis requires pumping the water to very high pressures and then forcing it through a membrane. So your carbon footprint's going to go up. Although the materials that are presented to us indicate that they're going to put LED lights in the plant, so that, and solar collectors on the roof. So they're offsetting that a little bit, but there's a pretty strong electrical expense with pressurizing the water to that level to treat it. And an argument we've been making for many years, my dad was involved with I remember the city of Burnsville was one that was debating a lime hardness reduction plant, is that you're over-treating the water. So certainly with reverse osmosis, you don't need that for firefighting. We're going to be irrigating in Northfield. We're going to be watering our plants with reverse osmosis water with expensive electrical costs to treat it.
There's one other communication point that I saw come out, and I just want to clarify it. In one of the documents, in one of the presentations, it said that the water rates are going to go up 24% That's actually annually for 4 years. And in that diagram that was put out, I believe it's on the website, I have a copy of it here, it doesn't say that, it just says they're going to go up 24%. But I just want to be clear that that's 24% on their calculations annually for 4 years. Yes.
So it'll be 100%.
100%. So the word annual wasn't in there.
Does St. Peter have membranes?
Yes.
Bolton Menk was kind enough to put St. Peter in the documents they provided for Northfield, and St. Peter is more than double the water rates of Northfield today, and I guess the goal is to equalize a little bit. Let me answer this one first. He asked about Bloomington. Bloomington has lime hardness reduction, as does Richfield. Most of the suburbs run on water like you have. Bloomington and Richfield have lime hardness reduction. Robbinsdale just put it in. That's all I can think of on my side of town. There may be some over.
Do they run at 0 or what's their hardness?
Oh, you can't go below. Minneapolis does a really nice job of getting to 4. But Eden Prairie can't seem to can't seem to get down there, and some of the, so 4 to 8 is common if the plants are running well.
Morris, Minnesota uses lime hardness reduction, but they start out with really, really hard water, and they get it down to 7 or 8. But the raw water is much harder. Sir, you had a question?
Well, I'm just going back. I'm not clear on where do we think Northfield is in this decision process? Anybody got an idea?
Yeah, speaking from a distance, because I'm less likely to get people angry at me, they've made up their mind a long time ago.
That they're going to do something?
They're going to go all the way to membrane plant.
Really?
Yeah, and that's it. Really, I was going to close the meeting with, because why are we here? Just to make a number of people unhappy with the decision would not be worth my trip. But I guess I'd like to have an open discussion with them, to be allowed in the room, and I think speaking as how Northfield people would say that they've honestly considered the benefits of the membrane versus the lime hardness reduction. And you know what? My idea of doing it like Edina and just putting a filter at each well, that may be totally not feasible. But when we asked, we got the answer, we know best. So I'd like to hear that there's been an understanding of that.
I offered a year or so ago just to simply help with communication so that what goes out to the public is as clear and understandable as possible, so that we're not saying something that might make us think one way and not another way. And I'd still be willing to do that. I'm a resident here, and I value this community.
Consultant.
I'm sorry?
You're not a paid consultant.
I pay taxes.
You know my point. You're not a paid consultant. That's
I just want to help. I just would love to help if somebody would raise their hand and ask for another voice.
I was curious about the different wells, so much different levels of manganese. I guess that's one of the. Is that normal? Aren't we all are they all drawing from different aquifers, or why is one well quite high and the other one's minimal? And
Good question for a hydrologist.
well, as high, does that one always stay high, or does this stuff?
These, don't quote me on this, but these 5 wells come from 2 different aquifers, I believe. So this might not be unusual. But don't quote me on that.
When you're at low levels like this, the numbers jump.
Well, that manganese is coming from
They do have.
certain wells, and you could target that, just treating that water instead of treating the whole city.
Yeah, for sure. There's only one in the report. There's only one that's gone over 300.
That's an option. And I think it's also important to know that if you have a working water softener in your home, you have no issue. If you have a working water softener in your home, you have no issue. Unfortunately, full disclosure, you do discharge some chlorides. So we got to be aware of that. And so to be aware of that, then what do we do to help reduce that? And I think there's lots of things consumers can do to avoid this big expense, have a good operating piece of water treatment equipment in their house, and reduce chlorides. But that's education.
Filtration plant doesn't discharge chlorides.
No,
like a
no.
softener in a house does.
Exactly.
No, just one sec. The quick answer on chlorides is our industry is creating the problem by selling you salt. So that's where the chlorides come from, and to treat the hardness.
I couldn't quite hear. Did you say that the city of Northfield is already planning on building a plant, and it'll be what did you say, the membrane? So it's
Well-
in the works already that this is going to happen?
Yeah, I answered a little flippantly. So can you?
That's our understanding right now.
Yeah.
And have they chosen a site?
They've done extensive analysis of sites.
Do we know what that is, or is that?
Well, that didn't mean much to me, but I
Yeah.
looked at a lot of the materials
It's
today.
in one of their presentations on their
And
website.
we've got a lot of that afterwards. You want to come up and
It's on their website.
see it.
Oh my gosh.
What does it look like from people that live right across the street from this proposed site at the end of Jefferson? apartment? Because there's already a water tower there, there's a telephone tower there.
I have no, yeah, I have no idea what the new plant would look like, but the location's on the website.
As opposed to all the chemistry that we're talking about, I'm looking at the aesthetics and home value, which is what is important.
Is it proposed in your neighborhood?
It's right across the street.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Hall Avenue is right there, and that's where you're going to put it,
Okay.
right? Can you see it? How, is it low level? Is it further out?
I've only seen the 3 proposed sites. I haven't seen the final decision. And do you know what the final decision?
I do not. No, that would be a question for the, at that point, that'd be a question for the city.
Like, what does a typical water treatment plant look like? Do you see it from the surface, or is it up in the air, down below? What does it look like?
Pretty conventional building, but yeah, most cities like Northfield and Edina are building pretty attractive buildings. Now, you might not want to. How high, how big? 2 stories. Now, it's probably less attractive with lime hardness reduction because there's a silo for the lime, possibly, and then some sludge outside. So it might be more attractive with the membrane option. Kind of speculating here, but
The lime hardness plant that was just built in Morris, Minnesota, is 2 stories high, and it has quite a large footprint.
does it have a silo? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they have to have lime. So,
I
but
like the farm.
So what I've read is that only 2 small towns in Minnesota have the RO systems. And I thought one of them was,
St. Peter.
well, then there's 2 others, and they're only 1,500 population each. But St. Peter's quite a bit bigger than that.
Yep.
So it has been scaled up to a town our size.
Sure.
Okay.
And scaled up for anticipated population growth too over the next 20 years.
But that's only 3 in all of Minnesota.
I don't know if that's accurate.
I think there's more than that.
I think there is.
More than that.
I searched pretty hard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's when I talked to the city of Edina today, I said some people are considering a reverse osmosis, and he went, "What? What about all the water waste?" Yeah. So it's not. There probably aren't a lot, but I'm with Scott. I guess there's more than 3.
What are the expenses of an RO system for a big city?
Pardon?
What are the expenses of maintaining an RO system for a city Northfield size?
Well, certainly the membranes. You really have to care for them. There might be a little less labor. Really, our ask here is that the city pause and consider it a little more carefully, and they should be in the room. Bolton Menk should be in the room to defend it. But I would quickly say that the lime hardness reduction plant might have more labor because they have to mix these solids and they make a mush and then they have big clarifiers. And so there's labor involved. I just toured the Eden Prairie plant. They've really got a nice operation there, but it's they have to watch it very carefully. Membranes you probably have to watch carefully, but there's not a lot to do except catch it when the pressure goes bad. But the expense of membranes is very high.
I want to read one thing real quick from the original RFP, if you don't mind. So there's a statement in here talking about public outreach. And it says a key component for the public outreach would be related to potential locations of the facilities and if treatment is needed, identifying what the public would like for finished water quality. Identifying what you want for finished water quality. It goes on to say public outreach sessions and provide final recommendations. I think that's great, but I didn't see it.
We have a survey.
It's not real.
I think
Some recent experience with that.
Yeah.
I know you
A
have.
little skepticism over
Right.
back here.
So, question, does membrane equal RO water?
Yes.
They are not going to deliver RO water. And of course, there's wives' tales about the corrosivity of RO. I don't buy all those, but they wouldn't want that water that pure out to the city. But they'll blend in. They'll blend in raw water with it.
So membrane equals RO water, but you'll want in water.
Exactly.
I think that's true. Right.
Exactly. So if you have an RO in your home under your sink, that's true RO technology. You're getting, extremely low TDS water in your home. This is not going to do that. It is going to do it to a point, but they're going to blend in hard water, so you don't have those other issues.
Let's go to a little higher level. Eric, are you with us? Do we have to
Yep, I'm still here.
say
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we had a question about whether they're going to get RO water. And I'm sure Bolton and Menk is planning to blend in. So they're probably blended up to 6 grains and control the pH. So they're not getting corrosive RO water. But my question, well, it looks like you got a thought, but my question was going to be, it's most likely they're using RO here, isn't it, and not ultrafiltration?
I actually don't know the specific details of their proposal, but you're absolutely right. They wouldn't want to send RO water through your distribution system because that would potentially be corrosive. So then you could definitely create problems with corroding the infrastructure, releasing lead, and things like that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
And I'm sure that's taken care of. RO water is low pH. It's acidic in addition to being low TDS. So they've got that in the plan, I trust.
Waste of water there.
So what's the balance on waste?
Some of the promotional materials for an earlier Bolton and Menk plant said they were getting the waste down to 20%. Scott's company does a lot more RO than I've done.
Yeah.
What's a tuned up RO do?
Well, that's what they were claiming. So every 100 gallons, we're in theory going to waste 20 gallons. But that's in some of these specs that I don't have those specs right now. But there is waste. At the end of the day, there is waste because you are treating your toilet water, you're treating every water that goes through this community is being treated in that method. So there's waste.
So what happens to the 20 gallons get pushed? In my house, it goes down the drain, right? So what happens to the plant?
I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know what if they're going to bypass, run it through again. I'm not sure, and I don't want to say. So
if you have an RO system in your house, you have to change filters. Is that true here too?
Oh yeah,
bet.
They're going with a full iron and manganese removal system before RO.
So that's going to be an expensive filter.
Right, but it's really what I would prefer and propose. Well, I don't know. That's with my sales hat on. I've been in these discussions for many years, and I've seen different cities approach it. And our industry's approach has been it's best to remove iron and manganese at the well or in a plant because it'll settle in the mains, it'll come up in spurts, and you get stains and brown water, and nobody's happy with it. So it's best to take that out as soon as possible. But hardness, it's just not something everybody needs out. You don't need it for irrigation and firefighting and a lot of industrial uses. So save that for the specific area where you're going to treat the water.
And don't spend money on that.
Well,
that's what we have for tonight. Yeah.
What would a comparable lime soda ash plant cost?
I have no idea.
Well, my quick reaction is that the 3 plants recommended were close in price, all 3 of them. Now, I think there's a $10 million swing, but between friends, what's $10 million?
and that was 2 years ago.
They were closer than I thought, and the real savings would be, if it's possible, to put a small pressure filter at the well. One of you guys mentioned it. Why don't we attack the well that's got the problem? That would be where the real cost savings are. But you still may need a building to consolidate the city services, which is part of the money.
So do you have a sense of how firm the city is on their decisions about location and about the treatment approach? You made it sound like it's sort of a done deal.
Yeah.
So what could this group do, or interested citizens,
Yeah.
if anything?
Well, this gentleman said that the land was already purchased.
That's
Yeah.
what I got from the website.
I think what we can do, I think we can have a voice, and we can have a unified voice to bring some of these concerns up. And we can talk about the clarity of the information that's coming out to the public. I know as a consumer, just tell me the truth. I don't care if it hurts, just tell me the truth. Listen to me, maybe take some suggestions, but I think the way that we get communicated to, I don't really care for it. And there's things in this proposal that I just wish that they would be honest about. And honest, it might be too coarse a word, but just tell me. If there's a legacy potential issue that when this plant goes online, if I could have a potential water treatment issue in my house, just tell me. So then I know I can potentially expect it. Maybe I can do some filtration to cover it. Don't tell me I'm getting soft water, because you're not. In a consumer's mind, most of us think soft water virtually has no mineral in it. Just tell me that it's going to have 6, 7, 8 grains hardness, whatever it is, just tell me that, and then let me make the decision how I want to treat it from that point on. So I think what we can do is we can agree that, some of these points, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, but just be honest and communicate it to us properly.
But to further answer the question is the obvious, write to your council person, put your ideas down, write the newspaper, subscribe to the local newspaper to support printed papers. I get 2. You all know that stuff, but at least you can't complain later that you never said anything, or you can't feel bad later that you never said anything.
You still pay for a newspaper?
2 of them.
Oh, okay.
Just going online and looking at Google, the proximity of the plant to your house, the minimum is 350 meters. They're recommending 1,500 meters, which is approximately 3 miles. So you don't get all this smelly stuff, this stuff that goes in your nose and kills you. What about that?
Well,
And consider.
We made our case on preferred water treatment, and so I don't want to defend the city, but I do want to say the obvious, that any water treatment plant is going to have chlorine gas. They're now requiring pretty sophisticated scrubbers. If they have a leak, there's a huge thing that has to scrub it out of the air. I think it's pretty safe. And I don't think you're ever going to smell it. You're going to smell it in your water, and you should call him up and get a carbon filter, but I don't think you'll smell it from the plant. I'm trying to think of which plant would be environment, from a neighborly point of view, you'd probably prefer the membrane plant to the mixing lime. You're not going to smell it.
Oh, for sure.
But
yeah, for sure.
There's sludge to be hauled, and trucks have to haul sludge. Oh, wait a minute. The membrane plant, no, the membrane plant doesn't have lime hard. The membrane plant would just have filtration.
That would be a better neighbor.
So yeah, that middle option is your least favorite of a lime hardness reduction plant.
We did take that.
Do you know who the consultants would be that have brought this project this far? And why are we not, why don't we quite agree? Someone brought this far.
Well, Bolten and Menk is your...
Northfield didn't come up with this plan.
Well, Bolton and Menk is your engineers, but I reread stuff today, and it sounded like they were hedging a little, that the city wanted hardness reduction, that they maybe didn't start out there, and the city wanted to push it. Now, whether someone in the city is worried about chloride or just wants to try new technology, I can't ascribe motives to it, but the city wanted Bolton and Menk to go that direction.
The hardness reduction is completely separate from the manganese filtration.
Well, they use the S word, which I beat myself up. I hate using it, but they told Bolton and Menk they wanted soft water, and that word comes up throughout the. Of course, we vehemently argue with the fact that they're going to produce that product, but that's what the city asked Bolton and Menk for. Bolton and Menk.
They don't actually build plants.
Oh yeah, that's why we kind of want to be on an even footing with them as their salesmen too. and they will supervise the construction. They're not a construction company, but they'll be the engineers that write the plans, draw the plans, supervise construction. Well, it'll go out for bids. Tonka comes to mind. They're the biggest Minnesota company that does that. Neither of our companies.
Referring to this as a proposal, I personally feel it's way beyond the proposal stage it's going to happen. Just from a technical viewpoint, do the citizens of Northfield get a chance to vote on this, or is it just whatever the city council decides?
They've gone through a process, and you're supposed to have a say, but I'm sure they've dotted their I's and crossed their T's in public notices and public meetings and things.
I mean, it's a proposal, but this survey crew, presumably working on this proposed plant, right across the road from where we live. It's been there 2 days, diligently working and measuring and all their stuff, so it seems like more than a proposal to me.
I think that's a fair read.
Are there grants to pay for this?
Boy.
It seems like that's in the process. Yeah, and it hasn't been awarded yet. That's all I know about that.
That's really big, though, and maybe that's where the citizens should be reaching out, because the initial plans assumed that there'd be federal infrastructure money. And that rankles me a little bit, because there's communities with really bad water that need federal, and some more bad sewage. There are more bad sewage plants than there are water plants. And you know, if you get the better consultant and you want the gold-plated plant, maybe Northfield will get the money. But if it's federal money, it's my money too, and I'm not sure that that's where I'd want it to go. But to finish on that point, though, I heard that was falling through because that thing the Republicans pulled with the debt ceiling may have pulled that back.
It is in question, but it's not dead yet. Sir, did you have a question?
Well, actually, that was part of it. I was wondering, I've heard very little about it, but is there state money and federal money that's available to municipal organizations like the city of Northfield to everything from design to operation? But you're saying that may have gotten written out in one of the budget agreements, or you don't really know?
I'm not sure, sir, and I wouldn't want to comment because I don't know what's happened at that point. So I wouldn't want to give you the wrong impression.
That's a big question, though.
It's a big question. So if that doesn't happen, how will it be funded?
You know more about plants that are operating. What does this add in terms of employees and budget to operate these plants? Do you know?
Yeah, in one of their diagrams here, they had what the additional employees would look like, and I'd have to reference it here. I have it, but there is some additional employees that would be added, but in full disclosure, they'd also have some savings by doing some consolidation. When they put some buildings together, they would have some savings there. So the total employee impact, sir, I wouldn't know for sure, but it is online.
And can you state clearly, I have hearing this, what company are you with?
Yeah. So tonight I'm representing Minnesota Water Quality Association. I'm employed by Dreesen Water, Culligan Ultra Pure. We're a family-owned business. We're based in Waseca. We do business in Minnesota, Indiana, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado.
Okay, but you're a Northfield resident.
I am, yep. 17 years.
I can't pick up the accent, though.
Funny guy. Funny guy.
I'm Ben, I'm the city administrator for Northfield. We do have 2 project pages right on our website, one on the water study that was done in the information. There's also a video related to that. And then there's also the water plant project page that's also available both on the project. So it's got kind of a lot of these questions and answers that you have.
So do you have the answer as to where exactly the location is going to be, since you're with the city?
Yeah, I mean, I would start by saying I knew that this was a discussion about treatment of manganese. I was assuming it was more, I thought it was about the public, but this isn't a city meeting. So I don't have all of your answers, and Justin Wagner is probably our best expert with our utility.
But you must know that.
Yeah, but yes, I mean, the land is purchased or process of being finalized for purchase. It's basically the water tower site on the east side of town.
Behind the water tower or
Yep,
next?
yep, behind the water tower.
Further east.
So
Yep.
it
And
won't
it's-
be right on Hall Avenue, is that what you're saying?
No, there'd be a new access road going in, potentially could serve new development on the east side for housing, so.
Did the city buy out the land to the south of the water tower as well?
I don't have the exact map here.
Yeah, it's on the website, I pulled it up, but I wasn't sure if it was, because there are two boxes, you have a bright yellow box that shows the actual site, and then there's like a large yellow box with about 160 acres at least.
There's the house there now.
Right, going around a house and basically sort of cannibalizing that whole side of the road. I just want to, and obviously Jefferson, there was a long-term plan for Jefferson to curve up, but is there, what's the plan for all of, I know this isn't the city meeting, so yeah, you may not be able to answer all that now.
I mean, I can certainly get it, or if it's not clear on the website,
Could
get
have
that, or we can get it loaded if it's not clear that it's on there, but yeah, Justin, be the primary one. We're also looking at a solar field, so we're looking at a net zero carbon footprint with the new water plant as well, so we're looking at a solar field.
Thank you for taking that question. I appreciate it. Kind of nice putting you on the spot a little.
So a big solar field across from Hall Avenue?
It'll be on the back, it'll be integrated on the site. You should have the concept drawings that show that. So no, it wouldn't be right off of Hall Avenue. It would be back behind the plant.
It's worse and worse.
Right near New York City, right?
Not that fun.
I think we'll let Eric go.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Well, if there's no other questions, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Just a private one.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
All right. Yeah, hang around. Thank you. Thanks
Thank
everybody
you.
for coming.